Hello and welcome to Precon Decon, the video series where I deconstruct the pre-constructed decks of Magic the Gathering's history. In this video we're going to look at the second deck from the Venser versus Koth duel deck, which is, funny enough, the Koth deck, which is mono-red. I didn't say it in the last video, but like each of the Planeswalker decks, Planeswalker duel decks were based around a sort of a defined moment in the storyline where, those two Planeswalkers came to a clash. And the Venser versus Koth one, because they are essentially like both like, quote-unquote good guys, it's the most like I want to say like fighting game logic forever. You know when you play like through the story mode of like a fighting game like Tekken or Street Fighter, and they have to like justify why two characters are going to fight, and it's usually just like I disagree with you, and now we're going to fight. That was basically like the storyline for Venser versus Koth, which I just thought was super funny. I didn't mention it in the last one, but I thought it just worth a mention there for anyone who is interested in the lore of why these two characters are fighting against each other in this in the dual deck. Anyway, let's get on and look at Koth's deck. So, deck list here. So 21 creatures, 6 artifacts, 4 instants, 3 sorceries, obviously a single planeswalker, and then 25 land. We've got a mana curve off to the side there. So really, really interesting, and actually sort of quite similar to the Dragons deck we've had fairly recently, in that it's not sort of like a fast red deck, sort of, that we've obviously seen like hundreds of times before. It's more like of a slow mid-range big red, I suppose, if you want to put it that way. Just because of like how Koth's abilities work out, as we'll see in a bit. So yeah, I was really interested, and also like I think Koth is a super cool character, and it's weird to me that it's taken so long for him to get like new cards. Anyway, let's dive into it. Start looking at the cards. So here he is, Koth of the Hammer himself. I love this art for Koth as well. This new art of him, because like his original card is him looking actually like weirdly quite chill, whereas this is like I think embodies him like more. I really do like Koth. I think he's up there in terms of characters, like one of my favorite Magic characters, just because I don't know have a weakness for like like underdogs and freedom fighters, that kind of thing, I suppose. Anyway, so 2 in double red for 3 loyalty planeswalker. So he's got a +1. You untap a mountain, it becomes a 4/4 red elemental until end of turn. It's still a land. So this is original Koth, who cared all about mountains. All his abilities care about mountains, which is why we're mono red, which is why all the lands in here are just basic mountains. And yeah, we'll see how that works out. His -2 is to add 1 red to your mana pool for every mountain you control, which lets you can potentially have like a really explosive turn. Considering what you could, I mean, it is potentially you have him for quote unquote free, because you can pay 4. And then uses -2 to maybe instantly get 4 red mana back, potentially. And then his -5, which is actually really interesting that it's like such a cheap ultimate. You get an emblem with all your mountains turn into prodigal pyromancers, so they can just tap and do 1 damage to anything, which is really, really good. Obviously, then you're not using them for mana, but like, who cares? You've turned all your mountains into sources of indirect damage, which is really great. So yeah, I really like all of Koth's abilities. Obviously they are, they do push him towards a very sort of like certain type of deck, which is we care about mountains, and we got a lot of that in this deck. But yeah, Koth in my eyes can do no wrong. He's my favorite child. Right, so then we have a Lithophage, which is like a really weird reprint from, I want to say like Mercadian Masks, because it is a big red creature with the drawback, which pretty much all the creatures in Mercadian Masks were. So 3 in double red for a 7/7. At the beginning of your upkeep, you have to sacrifice it unless you sacrifice a mountain. So it is a big creature, obviously, but that is like a fairly significant drawback. I guess you get a few swings with it. Like, while it's rather big, it's potentially going to be the biggest creature on the board, because like nothing in Venser's deck is this big, apart from the Wall of Denial, which can actually block this and laugh. But it's fine. I kind of wish it was something else, though. We've got a Bloodfire Colossus, so 6 and double red for a 6/6. You can pay 1 red and sack it, and it does Inferno. It does 6 damage to everything, which is obviously clears the board. Again, kills pretty much everything in Venser's deck, again, apart from that Wall of Denial. But yeah, just really good. You can just keep swinging away with it. Obviously, you could like double dip on this. It could get through and do damage, and then you could pop it and do another 6, which is potentially pretty good. Then we've got Torchling, which is the red Morphling, which is pretty cool. I think this is the first of the non-blue Morphlings, because they turned into a whole cycle of them, and this was pretty interesting. It was when it was printed in Time Spiral. So 3 in double red for 3/3. You pay 1 red to untap it, 1 red to make a creature have to block it this turn if able, 1 red to change the target of a spell that targets only torchlings. So if the Venser deck is trying to do like a bounce spell or something, you can like redirect it, and then 1 mana to either give it a +1, -1, or -1, +1. So yeah, a whole group of like pretty useful like little utility abilities. It's essentially got pseudo vigilance. You could do it that way. I don't think there's any way in the deck of giving it like sort of like a tap ability, so you could like just pay the red, untap it. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. The actually the forced block ability is quite interesting because you can use this to like kill off the annoying little like utility creatures maybe in Venser's deck. So yeah, I think Torchling is a pretty fun inclusion here. We've got 2 Earth Servants, 5 and a red for a 4/4. Gets +0/+1 for every mountain you control, so it can potentially be absolutely enormous. Again, assuming you're just like playing this on turn 6 after 6 mountains, it's a 4/10, which like that doesn't actually super matter that much because like Venser's deck is mostly small creatures, so like it feels redundant to have like a high toughness anyway because like nothing was really being able to kill it anyway that easily or that many things in the deck. So yeah, there's no ways in here to really, I guess, benefit having its high toughness other than it could like survive like the Bloodfire Colossus sweep, I suppose. Chartooth Cougar here with new artwork. So 5 and a red for a 4/4. Spend a red to give it +1/+0 to land turn, or you can mountain cycle it. So you can spend 2, discard it, search your library for a mountain, reveal it, and put it into hand. So that's quite nice. Kind of wish there was more than one, honestly, but is what it is. A Greater Stone Spirit. There is a whole, obviously, Koth being a geomancer, there is a whole theme here of earth creatures, basically, which is really cool. I always like seeing when red does something other than fire. Like I like seeing the kind of the rocky side of red, honestly. Maybe that's why I like Koth as well, because he's just doing something other than fire, which is what Chandra always does. Anyway, so 4 and double red for a 4/4. Can't be blocked by creature with flying, which is a surprising number of creatures in Venser's deck. And you spend 2 and a red until end turn. Type creature gets +0/+2 and gains fire breathing, which is pretty interesting that you can whack this boon onto another creature and then it gets fire breathing. It's a very indirect way of giving fire breathing, I suppose. But yeah, it's interesting. It's a reference, I think, to an old card called Stone Hands. I want to say. I'm sure someone will point out in the comments. We've got 2 Fiery Hellhound, which is just a very straightforward fire breathing creature. 1 double red for a 2/2 with fire breathing, and Pygmy Pyrosaur is along the same lines. 1 red for a 1/1, can't block and has fire breathing. So both of these are like fine, good way of spending excess red mana. And then we've got like a few landfall creatures, which is kind of an interesting theme to branch out into. There's not a lot of it in the deck, and mono red, obviously on its own, doesn't really have the tools to landfall like properly, I would say. But it's better than nothing. So 2 plated Geopede. I think this is new art for it in this set as well. So 1 red for a 1/1 with first strike. It's a landfall, so whenever a land ends the battlefield under your control, it gets +2/+2 turn, so it can punch up like really well. Attacking with this like on turn 3 as a 3/3 first strike is a real pain to deal with. I don't think there's multiple. There's not ways, I don't think, of getting multiple lands out. No, there is. There are artifacts in here that can do that. Never mind, ignore me. So this could potentially get the boost twice, which is good. Kosi's Ravager, 3 and a red for a 2/2, has landfall. Whenever a land ends the battlefield under control, it does 1 damage to a player. So nice, just turns again like lands into a source of indirect damage, which is fun. I do think that would have been a cool thing, like if Koth had sort of like signature cards that like focused on ways of lands doing damage. That would have been a cool thing, because like this is like a bit before like M12 M13, I think, when planeswalkers were getting those signature spells. It would have been cool for Koth to get like some sort of spell associated with him, that like an aura maybe that goes on a mountain and then it can like do shock or something when it's tapped or something. That would have been kind of cool maybe. Anyway, so a single Geyser Glider, so 3 and double red for a 4/4. Landfall is it just gets flying turns into a red air elemental, which is fine. Yeah, sure. Anger here with lovely new artwork as well. So 3 and red for a 2/2. It's a reprint from Onslaught, not Onslaught, but Odyssey block. I can't remember which one. I want to say Torment, probably. Anyway. So 3 and a red for a 2/2 with haste. If anger is in your graveyard and you control a mountain, creature you control have haste, which is nice. When it's dead, gives this boost to your whole team, which is pretty cool. I like it, and I say this artwork is great on it, because the original artwork is like a really angry little like dwarf or something. It's such weird art. This is great. Ether Membrane, so 1 double red for a 0/5 Defender and Reach. When it blocks a creature, return that creature to its owner's hand, end of combat. Super weird red card, but it is from Planar Chaos when things were just weird, and red was kind of... It got this extra tool in that it could bounce things, but it couldn't bounce its own things. It could only bounce like enemy creatures. I really like Ether Membrane. It is an all-star in one of my favorite decks I've ever built, which is Mono Red Defenders. People are never ready for red bounce, and Ether Membrane is great. I love it. It's also important in this deck because obviously it's got so few ways of actually dealing with flyers beyond just burn or whatever. Bloodfire Kavu, which is like a smaller version of the Bloodfire Colossus, 2 and double red for a 2/2, you can pay 1 red and sacrifice. It does 2 damage, but it only does it to creatures, it doesn't do creatures and players, so it's like a Pyroclasm effect, which is again fine. Like the deck's full of generally kind of big creatures. Venser's deck has got smaller creatures, so it's kind of one-sided, honestly. And then a Stone Giant, 2 and double red for a 3/4. Tap, target creature control with toughness less than Stone Giant's power gains flying turn, and then it gets destroyed at the beginning of the next end step. So yeah, a way of obviously giving evasion to some of your creatures that don't have it, but then the downside is they die. Actually, a good way of getting anger into the graveyard, I suppose. So then it can start giving haste to everything else. But yeah, it's okay. It's kind of just like a meme pick, honestly. And then a couple of Volshocks, just because Koth is a Volshock, so this is on theme. Volshock Sorcerer is Prodigal Pyromancer, but with haste, so which is absolutely fine. And then Volshock Berserker is just 4 mana, 3/2 haste, just very straightforward, kind of boring, but yeah, whatever. Need a bit of filler. Right, and then we've got 2 Pilgrim's Eye, so 3 mana for a 1/1 with flying. When it ends the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put into your hand, then shuffle your library, which is good because we want to keep getting mountains down this deck because a lot of the cards in here care about mountains. We've got a Volley of Boulders moving into non-creature spells, so 8 and a red, which is super expensive. It does 6 damage divided as you choose amongst any number of target creatures and/or players. I don't know if 9 mana is right for because 6 damage being able to divide however you want is potentially very good, because the absolute dream here is like like a 6 for 1, you call off 6 like 1/1 creatures or something. So I think like the versatility is good. It is a good amount of damage to spread around, but it is so expensive, and it's a weird choice as well considering what some of the other cards in the deck are. It does have flashback, so you can cast it twice, or you could discard it and cast it for cheaper. Because 6 red is obviously super punishing, but not in this deck where we've only got mountains. So yeah, it's okay, I suppose. It's okay. I kind of wish it was something else, but I'm not sure what. If you've got any ideas, stick a comment below. I'd love to hear people's suggestions for different cards in this deck. We've got 2 Searing Blazers, which is a fantastic burn spell from Zendikar. Double red. Instant speed does 1 damage to player and 1 damage to a creature they control. And if you've had landfall that turn, instead it's 3 damage to the player and 3 damage to the creature, which is such a huge bump up. So then you're essentially getting 2 lightning bolts, essentially, really. So yeah, really, really good. Really like there's 2 of them in here. It's a really good, efficient burn spell. Single downhill charge, X and 2 and a red. You can sacrifice a mountain rather than pay its mana cost. Target creature gets plus X plus naught until end turn, where X is the number of mountains you control. Obviously has a little bit of anti-synergy with itself because if you sacrifice a mountain, you got 1 fewer mountain for the boost. But being able to suddenly throw out potentially like a really big buff for no cost at all is really strong. So yeah, this is kind of nice in here as a one-of, I think. Right, and then a bunch of cards that might look familiar to you if you've just seen the Knights versus Dragons duel deck. And this is what I was talking about in that deck. It was really annoying because I didn't get the Knights versus Dragons duel deck when it came out. It was one of the ones I skipped. And yeah, when I was putting the graphics together for that one, I was like, oh, these cards are all very familiar. Yeah, it's so annoying that like, I don't know, there was so much like repetition between dual decks in this way, but here's what it is, I suppose. So we've got Jaws of Stone, 5 and a red, does X damage divided you choose amongst any number of target creatures or players, where X is the number of mountains you control as long as you cast Jaws of Stone. So at 6 mana, again, assuming you've got 6 mountains, this is straight away, this is Volley of Boulders, and it has the potential to scale up, and it's cheaper. Obviously, it doesn't have flashback or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just better than Volley of Boulders, honestly. That's just my opinion. And we've got 2 Seismic Strike, 2 in a red, does damage to target creature from the mountains you control, which again just scales up really nicely. And then Spire Barrage does damage to target creature or player equal to the number of mountains you control. So again, scales up really nicely. You can just aim this at the opponent and just hit them for potentially a lot of damage. It's kind of like a better Lava Axe, I suppose. And then Volshot Battle Gear and Volshot Morningstar, again, just kind of stay on theme. These are both very, very basic equipment, just giving power and toughness boosts and nothing else. Kind of wish these were something else, but then they also do help your creatures like punch up more. Yeah, they're just bigger threats, so yeah, it's fine, I suppose. And then Journeyer's Kite. This is actually a really nice rare to include in here, I think. So 2 mana for an artifact, 3, and tap. You search library for a basic land card, reveal it, put into your hand, then shuffle your library. So it is just repeatable, like land tutoring. I wish it went straight into play. That'd be fantastic, but then I think it'd be a little too good. So as is, I think it's okay as is. You know. A single Armillary Sphere, so 2 mana artifact, you can pay 2 and tap, sacrifice it, search library up to 2 basic land cards, reveal them, put into your hand. Yep, sort of sensing a theme here. And then 2 Wayfarer's Bauble, 1 mana artifact, pay 2 and tap, sacrifice it, search library for a basic land card, and put it onto the battlefield tap. So this is the better one. I'm actually glad there's 2 of them in here, and then you shuffle. And then, like I say, you've got 25 mountains. And I do think that's a bit of a downside, like just having basic mountains, because there was potential to get like non-basic mountains in here, and obviously like there are rare non-basic mountains, obviously. But I think we could have had like some non-basic lands in here, you know, rather than just 25 mountains. Like, because I know in Shadowmoor Eventide there was Mad Blind Mountain, I think, which still counted as a mountain. But we could have had, you know, something else like from Zendikar. We could have had like Teetering Peaks or Smouldering Spires, which help out. But another land from Zendikar, which I think absolutely 100% should have been here and still won the rares. Valakut. We should have absolutely had Valakut in this deck. This would have been such a good inclusion in the deck. So Valakut is ends the battlefield tapped, which is fine. It's not legendary. Whenever a mountain enters the battlefield under control, if you have at least 5 other mountains, Valakut bolts something, which is fantastic, and it gives you red. So just having one of these, I think, would have been like a really, really good inclusion in the deck. Because I ended up building my own kind of Koth themed deck. And you absolutely believe I put like a play set of Valakuts in there when they weren't silly money, like they actually are these days. I was actually surprised how expensive Valakut is to get, but I guess it's only been like reprinted like only a few times maybe, so that's why it's super expensive. But yeah, would have loved to have Valakut in here, and then 24 mountains. Yeah, fine, do that. But yeah, this I think would have been really, really nice to have in there. Anyway, so I think overall though, Koth's deck, despite what I said there, I think is still like pretty good. It has some like pretty solid cards in there. It's got a whole bunch of stuff I really like, but in the end it really pains me to say, because I do like Koth a lot as a character, but I am gonna have to give it to Venser's deck as the one I prefer. I just think Venser's deck has just got like a much like tighter strategy of like, and much more interesting strategy, I think, of all the like returning permanents and blinking stuff and getting ETB effects and having evasive creatures. Yeah, I just think overall it's a deck I like the look of more. Like Koth's is sort of, it's less interesting because it is just very straightforward red burn. Like even though it's not a traditional like fast red deck, it is still kind of, it's not doing anything too exciting. I guess that's my view on it. Even though I do still like it, but not as much as Venser's deck, obviously. So I'd love to know what you think about these two decks. If you've got a particular favourite between the two of them, how you think they would have matched up against each other. If there's any cards that you think could have been in either deck and they weren't included, stick a comment down below if you've got any thoughts or opinions, anything like that. But I hope you join me next time, because I'm going to come back with another dual deck. We're going to take a look at that. So until then, thanks for watching and listening, and have a great day.